Good evening, everyone. This is Michael Robbins, substituting for Tuya Robbins in our Invoking the Soul of Nations broadcast. All of this is part of our presentation on the Ask Project. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. This is a project all about invocation, the great and coming science of the new age. We are going to learn how, as individuals who are soul infused, and as groups, to call upon the higher energies and bring them into our personality and into the group personality to be expressed in the world in a positive way, which is in line with the divine plan as it is intended during the Aquarian age. Now, we've been doing some different things over the last few weeks because we're up here at the Little Bear Meditation Center, quite a bit above the Arctic Circle and almost 70 degrees north latitude. We will, when we return to the south, resume our invoking the soul of individual nations. But for now, we're working in the book, The Destiny of the Nations. And during the last 2 weeks, our focus has been as follows. 2 weeks ago, we looked at the soul quality of our particular nation. We didn't necessarily have to understand the astrology or the rays. Maybe we would, but we just evaluate in our own terms what is the what are the qualities, the higher qualities of our particular nation, what is meant to be expressing either now or in the future along a very positive, harmonious and plan aligned method. Then last week, last Saturday, we looked at in a similar manner, we looked at the personality of our particular nation. Now, these are the more concrete aspects of our nation and can sometimes be obstructive, can sometimes get in the way of the soul intention, but eventually, as we know in individual esoteric psychology, the soul ray is meant to be the sub-ray, or a sub-ray, the personality ray is meant to be a sub-ray of the soul ray. The soul ray, of course, one day becomes the expression or the sub-ray of the monadic ray, but it'll be a long time before nations are expressing in some monadic manner. Right now, they would be doing well to be integrated personalities that are aligned with the higher qualities meant to be expressed through the national soul. Now, I'd like to, before we get into thinking about tonight's work, which will be looking at the two together from your own perspective, what it would take for those two rays to cooperate, I'd like to have a little reading from the Destiny of the Nations, which kind of sets the tone. It's a wonderful book, and it was being written in the 1940s, I think partially before the war was over, but also continuing after the war was over, and it gave the picture of the world situation at the time. Now, since then, many, many nations have been added to the Committee of Nations, and many of these nations are fledgling nations. They're just getting started, and they have not really reached the point of integration at all, personality integration, but All the nations, like all the people of the world, are at different stages of development, and the ones who are more integrated and more soul responsive, and no nation is entirely soul responsive, are meant to help the nations that are up and coming. So let's take a look at this section here from the Destiny of the Nations, page 32. And it'll kind of set the scene of the kind of difficulties we are in at the moment, because there are so many competing energies, and they are not yet in harmonious or hierarchical order. They are simply fighting it out, and the representatives of these nations are also, fighting it out. So DK tells us here, at this time, the whole world is embroiled in chaos. Okay? I hope you can continue to hear me here. Sometimes being a little far north, we have a little difficulty. Okay. At this time, the whole world is embroiled in the chaos and the turmoil incident upon the clashing of the forces of the 6th and 7th rays. The 7th ray began coming in this particular type of cycle around 1675. The 6th ray began going out around 1625. And so we have the withdrawal of one ray and the incoming of another ray, and, the rapids, so to speak, the turbulence caused by this counter movement. As one ray passes out and another comes into manifestation, and their impact upon the earth and upon all the forms and all the kingdoms of nature has reached the point where the two influences are equalized, then a definite point of crisis is reached. Yeah, a definite point of crisis is reached. This is what has occurred today. Now, this today, of course, is 70 years ago, but I think it has a lot of relevance right now, and maybe even more intense. This is what has occurred today, and humanity, subjected to two types of forms or of energy, is thrown off center, and hence the intense difficulty and tension of the present world period. The cause of this is not only, in other words, it's saying humanity must learn to be centered again, just the way the meditator has to learn to be centered. The cause of this is not only the impact of the two types of energy beating upon the forms of life with equal force, equal force, although soon it will give way to a greater force from the 7th ray, but also that the energy of humanity itself, which is a combination of the 4th and 5th rays, pretty much at this point the 4th ray soul for humanity and the 5th ray personality, though one day in the future it will be the 2nd ray soul and the 4th ray personality. The energy of humanity itself, this combination of the 4th and 5th rays, is swept into the conflict. To this must be added the energy of the animal kingdom. Again, a combination of the energies of the 3rd, 5th, and 6th rays. Now, it's the 3rd kingdom of nature, but it's animated in its higher aspects by the 6th ray of devotion. We know how the domestic animals are learning to be human through the power of devotion, and also through being subjected to the 5th ray, which is teaching them along more human lines. Any little bit of learning that is purposeful and serves the higher kingdom, humanity especially, is coming in on the 5th ray, and humanity applies the 5th ray to help it grow in the animal kingdom just as we, a long time ago, for some of us on the moon chain, and for some of us on this particular globe, in this particular chain, were subjected to the fifth ray, working it up on the moon chain ourselves, and having it brought in by the solar angels if we were individualized in this fourth chain. So the animal kingdom is added to it, where this governs the animal or physical form of every human being. So we are allied to the animal kingdom through our physical form, and that's why biology, in its study, thinks that man has evolved from the animal kingdom, but the story in the secret doctrine is really quite different. You have, therefore, a meeting of many conflicting forces, and the world Arjuna, now that's humanity as a whole, fighting it out between the pairs of opposites, between the higher and the lower, between the soul and the personality, and that's every one of us too. Every one of us is Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So these many conflicting forces, and the world Arjuna is faced with a stupendous battle of many conflicting energies. One that is recurrent and cyclic, but which will, in this particular era, and this is the battle he's talking about, prove, and let us pay attention here, this battle will prove a decisive and determining factor in the age-old conflict between material domination and spiritual control. A determining factor, and we don't know for how long that will be, but it could be thousands of years. The forces playing upon the planet at this time are of supreme importance. If you will bear in mind that the sixth ray works through and controls the solar plexus, being closely related to the astral plane, the sixth level of awareness, and that the seventh ray controls the sacral center, but later the throat and the head center too, but at first just the sacral center, you will see why there is so much emotion, that's the astral part, so much idealism, the astral sixth ray part, and so much desire mixed up with the world conflict, and why also, apart from the storms in the political arena and the religious field, that sex and its various problems has reached a point of interest in the human consciousness where a solution of these difficulties and a fresh understanding of the underlying implications and the frank dealing with the situation is inevitable and immediate. Ray 6 and Ray 7. Now, you know, in the life of the initiate, we will have eventually the throat center ruled by the seventh ray. And that is what we are looking for. So many of the first degree initiates will be established before long. And when humanity, when the Christ returns, reappears, it will be the indication that humanity in its upper brackets has taken the first initiation. Well, okay. So this is a very conflicted era in which we live, and let us for a few minutes, a few moments, simply contemplate where we stand in this great swirl of energies, whether we are more responsive to the sixth ray or to the seventh ray, or are equally responsive to all, and the degree to which the animal part of our nature is bringing us into difficulty or into alignment with the larger forces. So a few moments then of quiet contemplation. We are all responsible for playing our part in this great transition from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, from the 6th ray to the 7th ray, regardless of what our actual rays may be. We are all responsible as disciples for doing the best we can in our circumstances to help this transition become possible, and a lot of that has to do with nurturing our community, our group, our larger nation, and its soul values. Our method also is to think in terms of the triangles, to form triangles within our contacts, to link with two other people, to bring in soul energy, love, goodwill, and light, which will transform the etheric body of the planet and will help the soul energies, even of the nations, manifest more clearly. I would say this, that if you're in a nation where many triangles have been formed of the kind the Tibetan told us to form, the soul qualities of your nation will come through due to your work and the work of your friends and associates along these lines. So let us always remember how much the triangle's work assists us in the work of the reappearance of the Christ and the work of bringing in the higher qualities of our particular nation. So let us be quite energetic and quite dedicated in the forming of the triangles. All of this, of course, is done in the name of the great Lord Maitreya. And he has said that whatever shall be asked in his name, with faith in the response, shall see it accomplished. So, we have to be unselfish about this and full of faith, because faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. So when we have our little meditation here, think of Lord Maitreya, and you can invoke him in the hierarchy as you ask for the soul qualities of your nation to come through. You are working within the sphere of influence of one or other of 5 planetary centers. If you're here in Europe with us, it's the Geneva Center, a major second ray planetary center. If you're in the North or South America, it is New York, a major 6th ray planetary center. And if you're working in the United Kingdom and its affiliated former colonies, but now cooperative nations, the previous British Commonwealth, then you are working through London, and that's a major constructive first ray center. Later, Tokyo and Darjeeling will be more activated in a spiritual manner. So think of that when you call on the soul quality of your nation and how it can manifest through the personality of your nation. Okay, friends, so let's have a little meditation here. We all link with each other across the globe in the various places that we are, because we are united in one sphere of consciousness. And we focus for a moment on the planetary center within whose sphere of influence we may be working. The pure love pouring through Geneva, the idealism pouring through New York, the constructive use of the first ray, the principles emphasized pouring through London, and perhaps some are in the sphere of influence of Darjeeling or Tokyo. They are both, in a sense, first-ray centers. Now we think of our own nation. What are its soul qualities? Its higher constructive qualities. These are the qualities that help to bring in light, love, and power into the world. But they're always distinct, depending upon the ray of the nation and its soul sign astrologically considered. Now, you don't have to know that yet, but just examine your nation. What are its soul qualities? And if you live in one of the larger nations, of course, VK has given some mottos for those, like United Kingdom, I serve. America, I light the way, I light the way. Russia, I link the East and West, I link two ways. So if you know those, and we will, as time goes on, we will be discussing those qualities. You can think of that when you think of the soul of your nation. Now, think also of the personality of your nation. Those are the more, concrete, material aspects, the habitual nature. Not necessarily spiritual, but there may be some spiritual elements in them, in these personality responses. Like, let's just say the people in the United Kingdom are known for their so-called stiff upper lip, the kind of first-ray resistance to attacks and sometimes resistance to the more progressive aspects, holding on to tradition. This would be a combination of first-ray and Taurus. There is a nation, of course, which is evolving the soul expression quite rapidly. The people of the United States are sometimes known for their excessive idealism along one line or another. This is good and bad. So your nation has a certain personality quality. What do you think it is? Maybe a few qualities. now, what's new about this particular meditation tonight is let's think of the two together. How is it particularly that the soul qualities of your nation can work through the personality which is its present expression? Now, there are probably many blocks to this ideal working through expression. But think about it. How would you put these two together so that the personality ray or qualities really become a sub-ray or sub-qualities of your highest national qualities? So we will be in silence for a while as you think about how to put the two together according to the nation in which you live. There is a combination here, and as the years pass, you will see it more clearly, so will everyone. But for the moment, with what you know of the better qualities of your nation, and its more personal, more concrete, more obvious qualities, how do you think those two could fit together in such a way that the divine plan would really be carried out through your nation? Obviously this will be the case for all, but in a better way than is presently the case. The divine plan expressing through your nation because its soul qualities are working through its personality qualities. Let's continue to think about this. And how can you, with your own abilities, your own rays, your own astrological qualities, your own experience, how can you contribute to drawing forth the soul of your nation and helping it express through the more obvious qualities of the nation? What is your role? And, of course, the role of the groups with which you may be affiliated. Every one of us is responsible to our own soul to the ashram that we are approaching, to the spiritual groups with which we may be affiliated, and we are deeply and spiritually responsible to our own nation on the way to being responsible to all of humanity as its better qualities try to emerge. So let us realize our spiritual responsibility to our nation as it prepares us to be responsible to all of humanity, to be a true international citizen, looking for a solution of the international conflicts, a harmonious agreement between nations. It doesn't at all mean that we sacrifice the qualities of our nations in some kind of homogeneity, some kind of borderless homogeneity. This is not serving the plan, not yet. So we keep the distinctness of our nations, and we help those nations become cooperative in the great community of nations. And our goal, of course, as this image shows, is to have the Christ Spirit, the Christ love, the Christ light, the Christ will permeate all the nations, so they truly can be drawn together in the love wisdom which He is bringing in an ever more intensified form during His reappearance, which will, we are led to believe, lasts some 2,000 years. If He could have such a tremendous effect, appearing for only 3 years in cooperation with the Master Jesus back in biblical times, we can only imagine what He and His hierarchy can accomplish during the greater part of the Aquarian age, and especially during the last decade of Aquarius, ruled by Venus, when the era of brotherhood will emerge in power. All the flags of the nations, as we see, they are the great ideals that we must uphold, and so often represent the soul qualities of our nations. So study your flag and see how its symbolism suggests the soul qualities of your nation. And here's our upcoming schedule. Not all things are exactly correct here, but 4 out of 5 are, and where we see invoking the souls of specific nations, we are substituting for the moment a different type of program, more focused on the destiny of the nations, and we will return, of course, to invoking the souls of specific nations. And let us remember that our great instrument in bringing about all of these changes that are necessary is the great invocation, our most powerful method of hastening or bringing into possibility the reappearance of the Christ and His externalizing hierarchy. So now we will listen to the great invocation and work with the thought behind it. friends, thank you very much for attending the meditations which Tuya and I are offering on behalf of the great work. And if occasionally there's a little cutting of the signal, you know, we are very far north, so we apologize for that, but Brett Mitchell will be putting up the programs on Makara, www.makara.us, and probably in those programs there will be no cutting. So tomorrow we'll be offering the Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes. This will also be at 5 p.m. GMT, 8 o'clock p.m. our time in Finland, and then the next week we revert back to the AM time, 5 a.m., and we hope that this allows you, some of you for whom the hours one week are inconvenient, to attend the next week, and that way we will get the broadest possible coverage. So we wish you very well, and to assimilate these ideas and to serve in any way you find possible to serve the soul of your nation. And we'll just go through a few slides here quietly with the Om in the background, and then call it the end of our presentation this evening here in Finland at the Little Bear Meditation Center. We'll be returning to the Temple of Silence in a few weeks and continue our broadcasting. All the best to all of you. Bye-bye.